Abuse nowadays has lost its meaning because people will go ahead and call anything abuse. It's crazy how many things people will call abuse nowadays. I was told I was abusing a girl because I told her she needs to study harder for a test, like WTF is that? This is detrimental to actual abuse victims, as in real sexual/verbal/physical abuse. No, your mom taking your phone is not abuse. No, your boyfriend not paying for your pizza is not abuse. No, getting whistled on the street is not abuse. People have forgotten the difference between unwanted/annoying and abusive. I was screamed at, swore at, told I was being abusive and was probably a pedophile for refusing to give a refund on an empty 12-pack box of ice cream treats, because the woman said they were smaller than they should have been. Didn't return them, just brought an empty box back. Was a manager at a well-known ice cream shop, happened to have quite a few younger females working that day, which apparently made me a pedophile. But I was being abusive. We've indoctrinated so much sense of self-entitlement into people with our everyone gets an award, no one loses, and how dare you tell your kid no society. Many people feel it's a personal attack when they are told no, because they've never experienced it in their sheltered little lives. I've seen comments and posts on Reddit conflating sexual assault with rape, it's a rectangle and square type deal, but still, and making everything into abuse. I survived an abusive childhood and have been sexually assaulted twice. I advocate for clarity in terminology because right now people are grossly misusing a great many terms and harming the people who have been actually hurt/derailing discussions about these important issues. And that's how I lost my job as her teacher. You are abusing the word abuse, and I will not stand for it. I'll tentatively agree with you. However, for a very long time many things that are abuse were not treated as such. Everybody wants to be a victim for some reason, so everyone says they are a survivor of some type of abuse. People will have one bad relationship and claim they have PTSD. I respect what you are saying, and agree with you on many points. But I want to give my perspective on catcalling. Honestly though, I'm saying this more for anyone reading who actually does catcall. There's definitely a scale between a whistle and a catcall, but I consider catcalling an abusive behavior. In my experience, it doesn't stop at one comment. I've had men follow me down the street, making increasingly explicit and even sexually violent comments as they go, or even try to get me in their van, or to give them my personal info. Even when it is just one comment, it terrifies me. That kind of uninvited attention from a stranger much physically stronger than me, it takes my power away in that situation. If I call them out on it, they could escalate and harm me. I do have PTSD from a physically, sexually, and mentally abusive relationship, so I'm sure that colors my feelings. But even having gone through years of therapy for that, I firmly believe that catcalling is an abusive behavior. Respectful people just don't catcall. People throw around abuse and toxic too often. Being shitty doesn't automatically make a person abusive. On the other hand, we are finally at a point where marginalized and abused people can say, "Hey, stop that, you jerk." I remember a time when men would grab women's butts in the bar, and if the woman said anything, she needed to lighten up. Finally, those actual abusive people are forced to own up to unacceptable behavior. These are the people you hear all the time say, "What, you can't take a joke?" after belittling someone. In a similar but opposite vein, and I'm not sure if this a wider spread or a me problem, I am afraid my abuse doesn't really count because it was less intense than what people generally think of. It's hard to explain. I just sort of saw the opportunity to put my thought out there. Getting whistled at on the street is definitely harassment though, and depending on if you get shouted at and followed and if it's recurrent, it might be able to be classified as abuse. I think the problem is people have different opinions of where the line between harassment and abuse lies, and some people don't see that line at all. I didn't even know I was being abused until I was on my deathbed. Yet when I talked to the police and therapist at the hospital, they told me all of these things were abuse. I was so surprised. But they were right. I think there's just some people, might be an unpopular opinion, hate me if you want if you disagree at anyone reading this, who like the attention and being a victim. Which is honestly so sick because you know what? I am permanently disabled now. I will never recover. I could have died not once, twice, but 3 times. He could still be trying to get me. He was talking about putting a hit on me. Like, is this what y'all want when you make abuse out of nothing? You want the fear? The mental illness? The paranoia? The drug abuse? Is this really what you want? Dude, I totally agree, and it makes it so much harder for victims of real abuse to be taken seriously or even recognize that they're actually being abused. Like throwing around words such as abuse, gaslighting, pedo, creep etc. is just making it harder for people to recognize the actual meaning of those words. Beat me daddy, on the other hand, is no longer considered abuse. No kink shaming allowed. A lot of generalization going on here. People are more willing to. Which I think is BS. Most people still act with decent manners and civility. What UP is complaining about is the small subset of shitty people, who have always looked for any excuse to game a social system and be selfish and poor-mannered. Those people are just using false claims of abuse as their new tool, because it's more of a hot-button topic these days with a lot of valid abuse problems being brought to light. The shitty people are just trying to camouflage their shitty behavior with the valid accusations of abuse. This isn't new behavior, it's just their new strategy. God, the amount of posts on insane parents where a kid just gets their phone taken away is fucking insane. Like, no Timmy, you aren't abused, you were being a little shit and got in trouble. The problem with this opinion is that so much of life is way more subjective than we like to believe. Everyone is different. One man's trash is another man's gold mine. Etc. etc. What is abuse for you may not be abuse for me, but what is abuse for me may not be abuse for you. It's also about the person's particular mindset at the time of them being abused. Someone stepped on my girlfriend's brand new white shoes the other day and she called me up so angry and upset she was on the verge of tears. To her it felt like someone stomped on her foot cause she is Asian and has been getting some shit from random people lately with regards to the Trump virus, so she automatically assumed it was an attack on her. I asked if the person apologized, and if so, how did they apologize? Was it a sarcastic "so sorry" or was it a more normal "I'm sorry, didn't see you"? And she acknowledged it was much closer to the second choice. Again, my point is, what may be considered abuse one day by a person may not be considered abuse the next day by the exact same person. Sometimes we can see the whole forest, and sometimes our outlooks only allow us to see a few trees.